Hello, and welcome to Lemon Green Tea. My name is Josh, aka No Crook. Going to be going by that nickname mostly because it's something I've used for a few years on a couple of different projects, including the Five Star Frogcast with my co-host Big Al Capone, also featured on a few of his songs on SoundCloud. If you want to look those up, I'm sure he would greatly appreciate it, and so would I. So you kind of get an idea of kind of who I am to some extent, or at least how excited I can get about things I enjoy. Now, this podcast, the actual title of the series is going to be Something to Drink On. Lemon green tea, my drink of choice for this podcast. And I do want to let you know that I will have a new drink every week, and that will be the title of every show. Because I think it fits, and I think it's something fun. Now, this is my first episode, so applause, applause, yes, thank you. Glad I can finally come out and see you all. And I just want to give you kind of a brief background on me, idea of why I want to do the show, etc. And I actually want to start with something really, really important about myself. Something I found out when I was very young, and something that I think is vital to everybody, really, as far as how they start developing themselves. And yes, the drink is to give me a pause, because I will rant and I will not stop. But here's the thing. My epiphany as a child was that my favorite color was red. Yes, that's literally the big reveal. My favorite color was red, and I found that out when I was in preschool. I realized one day that, hey, I really like this color. It represents very important things to me. I didn't realize that at the time, but looking back, I realized, oh yeah, that's a thing. That's a thing. Yeah. Well, the thing is that with a color like red, it had some very important influences onto why that color meant something to me. The very first of which was my favorite Saturday morning show when I would eat breakfast and before I would go bowling every Saturday morning. It was Power Rangers. Good old Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. And all the other series that came out that were Power Rangers related. But I digress. The thing is, I absolutely thought the Red Ranger was the coolest thing in the world. Not only were they the leader, they also had awesome power buffs with like mega weapon things that were super cool. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome. And, they were always the one in the Megazord that was like, oh, let's do this. And I was like, yeah. And they had these giant robot and kaiju fights, and it was super cool. And yes, I'm nerding out as a 25-year-old about what I enjoyed as a kindergartner. Thank you very much for the respect and appreciation I'm getting through this show. Now, that's just the first thing, because the Red Ranger represented to me somebody who's powerful, somebody who's strong, who can face adversity, and someone who has courage. All good things for a young guy or even a child to look up to, at least in my opinion. And the second thing that influenced my favorite color being red was Hallmark, because of those stupid Valentine's Day hearts that look nothing like the anatomical hearts, but are this really bright scarlet red that just scream love to me for some reason. So thank you, Hallmark, and thank you, Power Rangers. Unfortunately, I'm not getting any ad revenue from this, but hey, reality is good sometimes, and sometimes it's disappointing. Speaking of, remember how I mentioned my favorite color was red? And how it was power and love and passion, and, being a leader and confidence and having courage. Yeah, I had a hard time with that when I was in school. Had a really hard time with that in middle school and high school. It's kind of a weird kid. It's partially my own fault. I was a little bit of a dick. Um, just abusive to people. And I don't realize when I was that kid. Like, I never thought, oh, I'm kind of a jerk. It was only when people would say I'm a jerk, I'm like, nah, you're crazy. I'm a good person. Um, I can't be mean. I'm a good person. What are you talking about? That's not reality anymore. You're wrong. I'm not a sociopath. God, I do actually wonder if I was like a sociopath as a kid. I was awful, man. I would like stab people with pencils, like not like stab, like penetrating skin, but like I was just awful. I was a little turd. I was a little shit to people, and I didn't even care because I guess angst and other things in life. But that kind of started me off on a bad foot when I got into middle school, and a didn't help that I was a band kid who didn't play sports and who was a nerd. So there's that. However, the really important part about that was when I got into high school, I ended up having a group of friends, a very eclectic group of friends, just because I was a friendly person. And I always had been. I always wanted to be friendly. I just didn't know how to be when I was younger. That's why I was a jerk. And as I got older, I was still kind of a jerk, but I was able to listen better, which helped a ton. Definitely didn't cause any fights or anything. Actually, legitimately have never been in a real fight in my entire life. So, hopefully I never have to. That's good. But essentially, when I got into high school, I started really doubting myself and having a very, very low sense of confidence. I would have moments of courage, but not really courageous. Definitely didn't feel powerful. Tried to love people, definitely didn't feel loved back. Definitely caused me to have a kind of complex on dating that was awful for the longest time. And passion, well, passion was there. But it came in very, very weird form and shape of a youth group. Now, some of you are probably thinking, yeah, he just had passion for the pretty girls. You're not wrong for a couple of years. Okay, pretty much all of my high school years. But at one point, there was something that was bigger, and that was God. I started developing this idea of who I wanted to be, and like I wanted to be a youth pastor, and I started feeling a call to ministry, and all this really amazing, identifiable things about myself that I thought connected to the color red, and I was so excited. Then I went to college. I got a degree in youth ministry and psychology, and through my high school and college years, I had deviated from the rules of being a Christian. And by the rules, I mean, of course, that, hey, save yourself till marriage and never touch a girl at all sort of mentality. The whole book that came out, Joshua Harris, I believe, which was, don't even kiss somebody until your marriage day. I don't know, some kind of weird idea of theology and sex. But I digress. I very much didn't match up with that, especially by the end of college at a Christian school where I was getting a degree in youth ministry and psychology. And at that point, I'd already determined I would not try to pretend like that. If I ever had students ask me about sex, I would be very upfront and honest and tell them what I thought. Um, I also soon started to realize that would be a problem for a lot of parents. And my actions outside of church and outside of the school campus, well, let's just say they got noticed, and let's just say that the church didn't think I was going to be a good fit. So that was rough, especially when I was on my second year of my master's, and I realized, oh, after being kicked out of the church last year, I don't think the church is for me. So that's a lot of money down the drain. But unfortunately, um, well, I guess, unfortunately, I not only found that I myself didn't match up with the church, but that the church was not a very faithful place in my mind. And it was something that I didn't think I wanted to be a part of anymore. So, it was a mutual breakup. But on a brighter note, I found a job. I started working, obviously not in the field or the psych field that was my other major in college, because us millennials don't like working in the fields that we get degrees in. We just want to have a piece of paper that says we accomplished something. God, I love that tea. So here's where I'm at. I am currently 25 years old. I live in my own apartment. I'm barely keeping up with bills because jobs are hard and sometimes you don't get as many hours as you'd like. And that's a tough reality. But I'm making it. And about a month, 2 months ago, I had a very, very good friend of mine introduce me to a book called Shameless. Um, I can't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but I will definitely link it below. And the author essentially says, hey, remember that parable of the talents that they used for, you know, getting your money in church? What if it wasn't about that, but if it was about your life? Because the main premise is, well, if you have resources, then you should, develop them and give them back to God. Or develop them and use them for God's glory. Her perspective was, hey, what if you just do something with your life and you enjoy it because you were given it, instead of hiding it in a hole that you think the church wants you to, and then God will come at you later and yell at you for not using the life he gave you. And I was like, oh, that makes a lot more sense than just telling me to give more money to the church. I'm only somewhat bitter, guys, but I do say that with a lot of sarcasm because it never did make sense to me. That parable never sat right, just talking about tithing or using our abilities for God's purpose. It didn't seem full enough. And this idea just cracked open an egg and put it on the frying pan, and it was, let's just say, breakfast tasted good. It was awesome. It's exactly what I needed to hear, and it broke me out of an idea that I had failed. That this Red Ranger youth pastor loving person I was supposed to become had completely failed. I was ready to give up a few times. And I had a lot of moments of depression and anxiety and a lot of really bad choices throughout because I was just trying to grab onto something. And as somebody who grew up in a church where sexuality was bad outside of a certain context, and as somebody who always had this idea of himself being better than what he thought he was, and then failing in one of the biggest lead ups, it was a miracle. It was a miracle realizing that I wasn't the person with one talent, but that this life that God has given me is worth 10. It was a miracle to me to finally see a path beyond the giant wall that I had set up as my list of failures that I couldn't imagine possibly climbing over, when really I can just walk around it. I started living and doing things that I wanted to do just because I wanted to experience life. I was tired of telling myself no. I was tired of giving myself a reason not to be happy. And I don't want to blame that all on the church. That one was on me. I stopped enjoying life because I was too focused on where I would where I was broken, where I had failed. So that's where I was. That's kind of where I am now. Where I'm going is closer to the color red. This podcast is my love letter to this new reality I'm trying to embrace. This new thing and idea that has completely opened my life back up to hope and joy. And I want it to do that for others. I'm not always going to have an inspiring message. I'm not always going to have something uh, amazingly interesting or even just amazing at that. But I want to share my life. I want to share other people's lives. I want to share their thoughts and ideas because I think as humans we're made to connect on a certain level. And I think we're very bad at it. Which sucks because that's where we grow the most. And I think that's really what this is. I want to see myself grow. And I want that journey to be shared. I think that's what I've always wanted. I think I finally found a way to embrace my favorite color. Putting my passion, my courage, my love, and finding some sense of strength in it all. And who knows? Maybe, one day, I can be the leader. But maybe I don't have to be anymore. And that's okay. Hopefully, you have a good idea of who I am now and of my favorite color that is red. And yes, I will be asking everyone what their favorite color is. Hopefully, it will spark some interesting conversation. If anything, we'll just keep adding to the painter's palette that we're developing through this podcast. And hopefully, we have a nice catalog of colors by the end of it. My name is No Crook. Thank you so much for being a part of this with me. This has been something to drink on, and I hope you enjoyed your lemon green tea.